Hello everyone, P-Fun41 here, and today I have an Echo PE225 stick edger. And what we're going to be focusing on here today is the guard. Now this is the standard guard that came on all of these older Echo models. Now the problem with this guard is that it has this closed in face. Now this will cause a lot of problems with debris clogging up. As you edge, everything just gets stuck up in here, and because it's closed in, it just packs in there really tight. You can actually see we've got some debris that's still in here. It's dry now, but usually it's wet, and that will rub against the blade, cause your blade to wear out faster, and especially on these smaller displacement units, it can actually clog up to the point where the blade simply will not move at all. It gets stuck, and then you have to stop what you're doing, get out like a screwdriver and just dig all of that out there before it will start working again. Now the newer ones have an open face, and when I realized this, I decided to modify mine to be like those ones, which alleviates all of these symptoms. It prevents clogging, it makes your blade last longer, it's just much better all the way around. So what we're going to do is we're going to trim that edger guard and make it look more like this one. So we're at the messy workbench. Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to measure out where we want to cut. Now I'm going to measure about 3/4 of an inch from the edge. We're just going to do that at multiple points all the way around. And if you're wondering what I'm using, it's called a paint pen, and they are awesome. And they use green because my junkyard doesn't use that color. Okay, one more line. Oh, kind of messed that one up a little bit. Oh well. So, now what I'm going to do is kind of freehand it. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. If you want to make it perfect, you can make it perfect, but it does not have to be perfect. Now, if you don't want to cut your edger guard, you can just buy one of the newer edger guards, which already has an open face. But the way I figure it, if you do that, number one, you're spending more money. Number two, you'll have to get the old one off, and the old one's just going to go in the trash anyway. So it's a complete waste. This way, you save more money, you save yourself the effort of having to swap it out, and you don't have to throw something in a landfill. Seems like all good things to me. So the next part is you're going to want ear protection, you're going to want eye protection, and you're going to want to be in a well-ventilated area, because when you start grinding plastic, sometimes it melts, and plastic fumes are not good. Okay, so we're going to start by rough cutting this with just an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. Now there are other tools that you could use for this, but this honestly is going to be the fastest one for me, and it's easily available. So that's what I'm going to use. So we're just going to start by rough cutting it on the outside of this edge. That way when we clean it up, we'll bring it into that line. Well, there we go. Got a giant chunk out of it, and you can see it's still just packed full of all kinds of dirt. This is what we are eliminating. We want to eliminate these clogs so that it will perform better, and we won't have to stop and pry all this out when we're in the middle of edging. So I'm going to get a screwdriver and get the rest of that out. So to clean up this edge a bit more, we're going to be using a carbide burr on a 1/4 inch air die grinder. Now if you don't have one of these, you don't have to use them. It is possible to get this cleaner with just an angle grinder or other tools you may have laying around, but this is what I have. It's going to work well, so this is what I'm going to use. Now to finish the edge off and make it nice and smooth, I'm going to be using the air die grinder again, but this time I'm using a 120 grit sanding flap disc. Now, you don't have to go through all this trouble. If you're not worried about this looking pretty, you could just cut it in a hexagon if you wanted to. All that really matters is that you get this big chunk out of the way so that the face is nice and open, but I like to clean mine up so that they look nice and look as factory as possible. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. We got it all nice and smoothed out. I even rounded off the edges at the front and the back for a nice smooth appearance so that it almost looks factory. And then this paint pen will wear off over time. So the only thing left to do now is give it a proper test. One thing worth mentioning is that because the face of the edger guard is now open, it will sometimes have a tendency to eject debris outwards away from it. This usually won't be a problem though unless you've got something important like say a car that sits low to the ground sitting right next to it, but most of the time that's not an issue. So this is what our guard looks like after a long day of edging. You'll notice that we do have a tiny bit of buildup in the bottom here, but this is mainly because it's damp. Of course, wet or damp grass or dirt is going to have a tendency to clog up more than dry debris. But even if this clogs up, completely packs full completely, and I have seen that happen on really wet yards, even if it completely packs full of dirt, the blade will still be able to eject debris, so it will keep spinning. It will spin a little bit slower, but it will keep spinning, and that means that you can keep edging. You don't have to stop what you're doing. And then what's really nice is that when you're done and you're ready to clean it, you don't have to get a screwdriver and try to jam it in there and pry all the dirt and debris out. You can simply rinse it and it'll all just fall right out. Another thing that's nice is, believe it or not, you'll actually get longer blade life because the blade will no longer be constantly rubbing against dirt that's packed into the guard, so it doesn't wear out as fast. So yeah, definitely a modification I would recommend doing. Hopefully this helped you out. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below.